Let's make sure we actually film this instead of just doing a black and screen. This is Popular Front. This is another Numbskull game. Patrick sent me this. The game his son designed this one. That's what it says. And, well, this is a very highly rated game over on Board Game Geek. I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm also going to cover the expansion, which is some additional cards. First thing, get out of the way, I talked about this in the intro. This is no war game by my definition. Some people's definition might include it, but one of the key elements, which is that it has some kind of simulation value, it's not in this. It doesn't give you a historical setup, although it's possible to form such using the rolls. But there's no real reason that I can see for someone following that in terms of trying to win the game. And it doesn't really make any attempt to simulate the military decision-making process that would go on. At the very least, it's kind of somewhat themed or topical in terms of trying to show you the Spanish Civil War. But as one person who likes the game stated, and I think he doesn't like me, but this could as well be ants fighting or wars on Mars or whatever. There's nothing now. Some of the names of the cards affect this, and then the expansion gives some power differentiation, which helps a little bit. But overall, it's a pretty flavorless game. Component-wise, the new deck suffers from something horrible, which is every single card in the new deck is a different back color than the original decks, which of course means you can either play like I did with the new decks in there, new cards in there, and not worry too much about it, although card counting could be an important part of this game, and that could end up being an issue. Or you could sleeve your cards, or print new ones or something like that. But it's just something that, essentially they gave you what I consider to be almost an unusable deck with the replacement. Patrick seems okay with it, but whatever. The little wooden pieces, the blues aren't too bad, although the dark blue kind of comes close to the black. I had some trouble differentiating these two colors. It's pretty easy when they're right next to each other, all piled together, but when they're on the board, maybe in less than perfect light, it's impossible to see them. Likewise, the decks of cards are all the same color. So your anarchists and your socialists and your communists all have the same color deck. The only differentiation is which set it came with. That's kind of I think, a less than perfect situation. The game's a team game. In the true sense of the word, there's no individual victory in this. So you're basically playing a two-player game with 3 players per side, or you could play with less players. Now, in the basic game, you just have to have an even number. In the basic game, you have, although one person could play 2 sides at once or something. In the basic game, everybody has the same exact deck. So there's no problems there. But if you're playing with the expansion, you kind of want to play with all 3 powers per side. It would be possible to play, instead of a solo game like I did, a 2-player game where you each have control 3 countries or something like that. It might be really difficult to try to add those expanded powers, and let's say a 4-player game, you leave 1 out on each side. That might feel a little weird. I think it would be perfectly doable, though, and it's, like I said, there's not a huge simulation value to the game, so what harm in screwing with it? There may be a balance issue. I've seen some people note that some of the powers seem more unbalancing. Maybe some of the decks seem unbalancing. I'm not sure about that. I didn't see enough of that to be able to comment on that. Certainly the base game is absolutely balanced. The initial play of the game what I found was a very appealing, and I really liked it when it started, kind of go-like territory commanding. And then you end up filling in the territories as you place. By the way, the board, one problem with the board is it's one of these single-piece fold-outs, and I ended up having to use a clip here to make it stand at all. The other option would be to use plexiglass. You know, people talk about plexi on paper maps. I almost never have to do it on paper maps. I only have to do it with these damn one-pieces because they tend to warp. And this one definitely has some warp, you can see here. Now, I got this new from him. It's been sitting in his store house, but whatever, you know. It's not like it's my situation. It's what's causing the warping for some reason, although it's dry as hell here. I would think that would go well. I don't know. The rules, the base rules, are complete, but I found them very distracting, the color, etc. in them, and just key issues are... almost the entirety of the rules could be reproduced on a single card. And that would make a great play aid for it. And that would excuse sort of the difficulty I had with reading the rules, because then I would have the card in front of me and be able to do it. Obviously, that's something you can make yourself, and no biggie there. But it would be nice to have it come with the game. All right, what about how the game plays itself? Well, I'm having a hard time with this. So ignore whatever you have about a simulation to put in play about this. And you know that I have tons of grumps about games that are supposedly about something and don't feel terribly much like they represent the subject matter. But let's ignore that for a while. Let's make sure I exist here. The game itself comes down to this weird sort of guessing game about what the other player is holding as their players are holding as their combat cards, and that becomes about all there is to it. If they have a big hand of cards, you can kind of guess, well, they probably have some good cards. I have to count on them having something decent. So in the multiplayer game, I'll go pick on the guy without many cards, and because of the way the victory conditions work, all you have to do is win some battles. Right? Each turn you want to win some battles, and you want to win them against important places. So it's actually to your disadvantage to say hold Madrid if you're likely to lose it, because the other guy's going to get points. You know? And the other guy might be able to, with the withdrawal card, maybe give Madrid up without losing points, this is like the biggest point swing thing you can possibly do in the game, right? Convince the other guy to attack Madrid, and then you have a withdrawal card and he has no way to destroy its ability. The way the cards work is they have these special abilities on them, these combat abilities, many of them, which allow you to destroy the card. And that's where the guessing game comes in, is do my special abilities match up against his? I think I have a good hand, but it's possible he has the exact counters for me. It's very likely he has a decent hand because he has X number of cards. If he only has a few cards, you kind of don't want to deploy your whole hand against him, because the defender gets to kind of draw new cards whenever he runs out. So he'll get this constant supply of cards and drain your attack capability with that. I'm not saying that it's trivial to make these decisions, but I'm saying that they're kind of uninteresting. I don't feel like I'm really competing with an opponent so much as I am assessing his hand strength or the different opponent's hand strengths and trying to figure out where's the weakest place I can hit and what can I do the most damage against. And I'm not sure that's uninteresting. I found it unsatisfying in some sort of way. I felt like, I don't know, I'm looking at a bunch of people just looking for the weak guy, and I'm going to slam him with the dodgeball ball. But I don't get to keep rolling any further. I have the extent of my hand. If he withdraws completely from a city, if he just leaves the city, he doesn't deprive me of the victory point. The withdrawal card deprives me of the victory point. But he does, he gives me a card, and I can continue my attack. So he does have to put up some sort of defense, and it doesn't cost you much as a defender to throw up a defense, unless you're holding a really important card you want for your attack. I hear people say, hey, this is a game about logistics and all this, that, and the other. I don't know. It's not that terribly much one, the way I saw it. You pretty much always got the ability to build troops somewhere and to shift them, another space, as long as you have the numbers that work, and get them to some place that you can attack that's worthwhile. The particular terrain around Madrid makes it more advantageous to attack from the north and the south. And there's little elements like that. But I just didn't feel like I was doing any... It just didn't feel like my decision-making or anything had much to do with war at all. It had to do with card manipulation and this guessing game of, can I beat this guy? What does he have in his hand? It's not like he necessarily has a better card than me. He might just have the counter to what I have. Now, that would all be great if there was some sort of deck construction element to it, maybe, or some sort of tailoring of your deck. There's a teeny bit of that in the expansion. Some of the powers, for example, the anarchists can discard 2 cards of the same type to draw 3 more cards. But they probably just want to do that to generate more cards, unless the 2 cards they have are really awesome ones. The communists can discard a card from the top of their deck after their turn and get themselves an extra partisan card. Well, that seems just generally a worthwhile thing, because it generates them an extra card for something that doesn't really cost anything, because you can reshuffle. But it does show a card from your deck to everyone, including yourself. I don't think there's any great cost. Anyway, a couple of the powers have a little bit of limited ability to do stuff, but not a whole hell of a lot. And that means there's no real tailoring of these decks to try to focus on one sort of side to it. You do have the constant choice of what to do with your points. Is it easier to attack something big to get the victory points from that? Because victory points never get taken away from you. Or is it more important to try to shift the political thing? Now, the political thing only shifts once for an entire cycle of turns. Every player gets a turn. Well, you can only shift political once during that. So if that becomes a big fight, that becomes a big fight over 1 victory point. So clearly you don't want to make too big a stand on political, because if you do, you're wasting resources that you could be taking, a 2-point city or a 4-point city in the case of Madrid, each one of your player turns, and generate a lot more points and not worry about the political move. The political move, though, does come with another bonus, which is everybody on your side gets an extra card. Now that means whether or not to go political depends maybe on the number of players. The value of the political play becomes greater if you have 3 players per side than if you have 1 player per side, because you're only getting 1 extra card if you have 1 player per side, but you get 3 extra cards if you have 3 per side. On the other hand, you might have to play heavier for the political. There's some interesting ideas here. It's a cute game. I would definitely break it out and play it as kind of a light diversion now and then. But there's not a lot here that really impresses me as some sort of deep game. And that's why I'm surprised, because it has a really, really high rating over at BGG. Maybe I'm missing something big. Maybe some of the fans of the game can come back and say, oh no, there's so much strategy especially on the board play. That's where I'm not seeing much. The guessing game and bluffing involved with the cards, I kind of see that, and it doesn't impress me too much. I'm never a big fan of rock, paper, scissors, and the fact that I've been dealt a handful of cards with rock, paper, scissors on them, that's more complex than that, but there's more relationships and more of a web there. That just doesn't thrill me. If it sounds exciting to you, hey, you like this. But if it doesn't, or even if it sounds vaguely exciting, what about the strategic elements of the board? I feel like there's so little there that I'm just very underwhelmed with that side of things. Anyway, it's a fairly small game. You could probably If you take the damn slipcover off and glue it on like I did, it's easy to open at least. It's not a very long game. So, if you're maybe into a more AT or wargaming type experience, but your group's not into it, it could serve as something you could get people who are more into Euro games to accept and see as not that painful from their side of view, and maybe not that painful from your side of view. So sort of a compromise, because it is a shorter game. It only takes a couple of turns really in the 6-player game. It probably takes more turns in a 2-player game, but overall they say about 90 minutes. That's a pretty good span. You can usually get people to agree to play something of that length. So it may serve as kind of a compromise game for a group that has trouble agreeing to play, all one type of thing or all another type of thing. At least give you some flavor of some military contest. One weird thing with the player teams, it really is a team game. And that also doesn't appeal to me terribly much. When I'm sitting down to play a multiplayer game, I kind of want to be trying to win. Even if I'm aligned with a team and can't fight them, I want to be doing things that will improve my chances of victory over the other people sitting there. You could say, hey, consider it like a co-op game. And I guess that's a fair take. I'm not sure how much co-op games really appeal to me either. I view them as kind of multiplayer solitaire, really, because you're trying as a group, which I kind of like. I like games that are designed for solitaire. I like to play them multiplayer. It just seems strange to me to be sitting there with 5 other people, and I'm trying to work with others on my side. And presumably, I shouldn't be showing them my cards or talking to them too much. I should be playing my own game, but it just feels a little odd to me whenever I sit down to a game where I'm just trying to win as a group victory against another group victory possibility. I usually excuse that because the games where it exists, where I see that the most often, are really big war games where, it's such a huge effort that it kind of makes sense for speed of play, whatever, to be able to sit down and play it under those circumstances. I'm thinking, something like OCS or the Regimental series or something along those lines where, hey, we're just a bunch of people getting together playing something huge, and kind of in some ways we're actually adding to the flavor of the realism of the game by dividing command. I think you add to the realism of this by dividing command, but there isn't much there to begin with. So making that step doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot for the game. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. I have obviously, kind of mixed views on it. I think it could be fun. I'd view it as completely beer and pretzels, though. Because